So, if you think about sort of the areas of expertise that we all bring with Flatiron, we have the data collection technology. We have a lot of relationships with our sites and as well as the EHR. Roche Genentech is obviously a global leader in clinical trial development, understanding biomarkers, the impact on therapies, using that information for new therapy development. Foundation Medicine is the leading platform for clinico-genomic profiling. And so what we're doing in this trial is looking at a population of patients with advanced lung cancer who are being treated as they would normally be treated in the clinics by the physicians. And we are taking blood samples at fixed time points. And from those blood samples, Foundation Medicine is analyzing the circulating tumor DNA longitudinally. So that information is collected along with the clinical and outcome information of the patients.
So this
I think for a number of reasons. One, in a pilot or feasibility study, you want a population of patients where you're going to be able to get enough patients. And unfortunately, lung cancer is a very common disease.
Yeah.
Second, one of the areas of real interest in understanding some of the scientific objectives that I talked about are in the realm of immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is a commonly used treatment in the context of lung cancer, both types of lung cancer, actually. And the third reason is just a huge unmet need. Lung cancer, both non-small and small cell lung cancer, are both terrible diseases. We lose thousands of people a year to these diseases, and so just a great unmet need and lots of important questions to be answered. Yeah, it's a great question. So we're anticipating finishing in early 21. I'm happy to say that so far, in spite of COVID, things have been actually going quite smoothly and really continuing with really and surprisingly very little disruption. The two objectives, sort of going back to what we touched on a little bit earlier, one is this, as I said, it's a pilot or feasibility study. And one of the things we're really digging into is understanding the rate at which we can actually enroll patients and who's eligible for this trial, what percentage of patients who are actually eligible for this trial are getting in. One of the biggest problems with accrual to clinical trials, one of the biggest problems with clinical trials is getting enough patients to accrue. So that's something that's really critically important to us, is understanding accrual to this. As you sort of think about this concept, which we strongly believe in, of being able to, bring clinical trials to patients and give as many patients the opportunity to enroll on clinical trials as possible, that'll sort of aligns with that goal. So that's going to be one important piece of information. And then the secondary objective to the trial gets to the science. So what things can we learn about resistance mechanisms? What things can we learn about whether you can detect a patient's response to a cancer therapy with a blood test before you actually go and do a CAT scan? Is there a world in which these blood tests can actually potentially replace the need or really augment the information that you get from imaging studies? So we don't have a comparison group per se, but what we're able to do, and it's really one of the interesting things about having access to these data, is normally in a clinical trial, you have a clinical trial open at a site and the site sponsor comes to you and says, how many patients a month do you see that are potentially eligible for this trial? And you sort of say, we have 10 patients a month who we think are going to be eligible. It's just hard to get at those data. And so when you're accruing, you say, well, we hit our target, we went below our target, we went above our target, but the targets in themselves are pretty squishy. One of the things that we're actually able to do here is we're able to look, using our data analytics platform, at the number of patients coming through the practice who actually are eligible for the trial. Do they have the disease? Are they starting a new line of therapy? Do they meet the inclusion criteria? And so we can sort of look at the numerator, the patients that we've enrolled, but also look at the denominator. So we can get an idea of what's the percentage of patients who are enrolling, and we can start to dig into the data, work with our sites to try to understand, well, if we're enrolling X percent of patients, what's happening to the other percentage, and what kinds of things can we learn from that to take forward in the future to increase the percentage of patients who get enrolled on trials.